Terrorist group Hamas unleashed pure, unadulterated evil in the world.
Now let's talk about Hamas for a moment, because President Biden just called them a terrorist group. Let's be honest about Hamas. They have been labeled a terrorist group by less than 12 countries in the world. The vast majority of the world, including the UN, does not consider Hamas a terrorist group. Instead, they consider Hamas to be a political party, a force, and the legislative body of the Gaza Strip, elected democratically and in power since 2007. So Hamas, whether we like to admit it or not, has a militant wing, but they are also a recognized political party inside the Gaza Strip. They were voted into power. They have an established leader and a hierarchy. And even worse, they are a party, they are a political party without any kind of citizenship, because the Palestinians who they represent aren't a recognized country. So what that means is that Palestine and Hamas are politically accepted by the majority of the world, right? It's really only the United States, the US allies, Paraguay, and the European Union that see Hamas as an actual terrorist organization, and of course Israel as well. The rest of the world sees Hamas as a political group without a country, and importantly, without a military to defend itself. So I want to make sure that you understand that when the president says that Hamas is a terrorist organization, he's really talking from an American point of view only. In the eyes of the Americans and in the eyes of the Israelis, Hamas is a terrorist group. But to be fair, in the eyes of Iran, the US military is a terrorist group. So it's all about perspective on this one.
But sadly, the Jewish people know perhaps better than anyone that there is no limit to the depravity of people when they want to inflict pain on others.
Now, this is another thing that I think is important, because the president just said the Jewish people. Hamas exists for one reason. They were created in 1987, specifically to prevent and destroy Israel, because Israel was oppressing the Palestinian people. It was the oppression of Israel against Palestine that was the birthplace for Hamas. Let's not get the order of actions confused here. Hamas did not exist prior to 1987. The ongoing pressure and conflict between Israelis and Palestinians in the country of Israel, and the marginalization, oppression, discrimination that they were putting on the Muslim people there, is really what led to the birth of Hamas as a way of fighting back against Israeli oppression. And Hamas is targeting only Israel, not Jews. There's a big difference between an Israeli and a Jew. The president here said that Jews are the target, and that is not accurate. Israel is the target, the country of Israel. Hamas doesn't care whether Israel is full of Christians or Jews or other Muslims. If it's oppressing the Palestinians, if it's depriving the Palestinians of a homeland, then Hamas is there to fight and counteract it. Outside of Israel, the state of Israel, Hamas doesn't really exist, which is why the rest of the world does not see them as a terrorist group. Interestingly, it is also the reason that the United States does label them as a terrorist group, because we are trying to show support for Israel. So don't think that Hamas is targeting Jews. They are not. Hamas is in a very clear fight for the survival of the Palestinian people in their own state within the landmass that is known as Israel.
I also spoke with President Abbas, the Palestinian Authority.
President Abbas of the Palestinian Authority is not the recognized leader in the Gaza Strip. He is the recognized leader in the West Bank, but not the Gaza Strip. They have two very different forms of government. So what the president is saying here, without saying it, is that he is speaking to the Palestinian Authority, who does not represent the actual body of victims who are being attacked right now.
Reiterated, the United States remains committed to the Palestinian people's right to dignity and to self-determination.
This is a very important lie of omission here. The president just said that he reiterated that American support to Palestinians is there for their right to dignity and self-determination. What he did not say is that they have any right to self-preservation or to protect themselves. The president has said that Israel has a right to protect itself. He is not giving that same permission to the Palestinian people. That is an important point in this conversation. At no point during this address will you hear the president say that the Palestinians have any right to protect or defend themselves. He does not acknowledge them as a group of people. He does not acknowledge them as an oppressed people within the lands of Israel. And that is a sad and frustrating thing, but it's also what's known as a lie of omission. He is not telling you the total truth. The total truth being that the United States does not actually support the Palestinian people in their fight against Israel.
The assault on Israel echoes nearly 20 months of war, tragedy, and brutality inflicted on the people of Ukraine.
So here the president is starting to make a transition to compare what's happening in Israel to what's happening in Ukraine. It's important to me that you understand that this is also a lie of influence. The president is trying to make you believe that there's a connection between what's happening in Ukraine and what's happening in Israel. They are two completely different types of conflict. completely different types of conflict. In Ukraine, you see an outside nation state invading another independent sovereign nation state. That's not what's happening in Israel. In Israel, you have an oppressed group that is launching an attack against its oppressor. And then you have the oppressor responding and going well above and beyond in terms of capability and response to the original attack. So they cannot be compared. Even though in this address, you'll see that he continues to make comparisons to the two in a plea to the American people to support American interests in both conflicts. While I am all for American interests and I understand that there is a great deal at play at stake here for the United States, I want to make sure that we highlight this lie of influence because this is not actually an accurate statement. It does not reflect what's happening in Ukraine in any way. It's a separate conflict carried out for separate reasons in a separate, different way. If you like this short clip, make sure you click here to see the next clip or here to see the full podcast episode.
So fresh on you.